The departure lounge buzzed with impatient travelers. The clock above Gate 17 blinked 7:42 p.m., its red digits reflecting off the wet airport floor. Outside, rain streaked the windows like restless tears. Flight 709 to New York was boarding, the last flight before the storm grounded everything else. Among the sea of adults hurrying to their seats was a small figure clutching a faded blue backpack and a toy airplane with Falcon 01 painted on its wings. Her name was Maya Thompson, just 11 years old. The toy had belonged to her father, a former Air Force pilot who now worked overseas. Her mother knelt down beside her, adjusting the scarf around Maya's neck. "Just stay quiet, sweetheart," she whispered. "It's only a few hours. Daddy will be waiting when you land." Maya nodded, her lower lip trembling. She didn't. Like airports, they felt too big, too cold, full of people who never looked down far enough to notice someone her size. When they reached the boarding gate, a smiling flight attendant scanned the ticket until her smile stiffened. Ma'am, is there an escort listed for this unaccompanied minor?" Maya's mother frowned. "She's not unaccompanied. I spoke with the airline earlier. Her father will meet her in New York." The attendant shook her head gently. "I'm sorry, but without official documentation or guardian approval, regulations won't allow her to travel alone." Panic flashed across Maya's mother's face. "Please, it's an emergency. Her father's sick. She has to go tonight." Passengers began to shift uneasily behind them, anxious not to miss their flight. Maya looked up at the rows of towering adults, feeling invisible. She clutched her toy plane tighter, its chipped silver paint pressing into her palm like courage. The gate agent came over, wearing a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry, but she'll have to leave the aircraft. We can rebook for tomorrow, once proper authorization is arranged." Maya's throat tightened. "But my dad's waiting," she whispered, voice cracking. No one answered. Her mother tried to argue, but the staff simply repeated the rules. Around them, people averted their eyes, pretending not to hear. Then a calm, steady voice spoke from behind. "Everything all right here?" It was Captain Reynolds, tall, gray-haired, with the quiet authority of someone who had seen more skies than storms. His eyes softened as he looked at Maya, the trembling girl holding that tiny airplane. The gate agent straightened. "Captain, there's a situation. The child can't fly unaccompanied." Reynolds crouched to Maya's level. "Falcon, huh?" he said, pointing to the name painted on the toy. "That's quite a call sign. Did you pick it?" Maya shook her head. "My dad did. He said one day I'll fly higher than him." Something flickered in the pilot's eyes. Recognition. Maybe memory. He stood slowly, glancing toward the flight attendant. "I'll take responsibility. She can sit near the cockpit." The attendant hesitated, but before anyone could respond, the loudspeaker crackled. "Final boarding call for Flight 709 to New York." Maya's mother hugged her tight, whispering, "Be brave, my little Falcon." And as Maya stepped down the jet bridge, eyes wide, heart racing, no one realized that before this night ended, that small girl would become the reason Flight 709 would make history. The storm had grown worse. Sheets of rain hammered the glass walls of the terminal, blurring the lights of the parked planes outside. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud of thunder echoed through the hall, mixing with the low hum of delayed passengers and rolling luggage. Maya sat alone by the far window, her small backpack beside her, her toy airplane resting in her lap. The bright silver paint had faded over the years, but the word Falcon still stood proudly on its side. She pressed her finger to the fogged window and began tracing lazy circles, whispering to herself. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, the phonetic alphabet. Her father had taught her that on summer nights when they'd lie on the porch, watching planes blink across the stars. He used to point up and say, "The sky listens if you speak its language, Falcon." Now the sky only seemed to roar back. Behind her, the terminal speaker crackled with updates about grounded flights. Maya's flight, Flight 709, was still listed as boarding soon, but no one seemed sure if it would ever take off. Her mother had left hours ago, forced to return to the hospital where her father lay recovering. She had promised someone from the airline would take care of everything, but no one came. As the storm deepened, Maya's curiosity tugged at her. Through the glass, she could see Captain Reynolds climbing back into the jet, the same man who had defended her earlier. She remembered the calm in his voice, the steady way he looked at her, as if he believed she belonged in the air. And then she saw something else, a flicker on one of the radar screens near the cockpit window. The flight plan lines shifted slightly, and though she couldn't read all of it, the pattern looked wrong. Her father had shown her similar maps on his simulator at home. The winds were changing direction, fast. Without thinking, Maya picked up her backpack and walked toward the boarding bridge. No one stopped her. Most of the staff were distracted by the storm alerts. She slipped quietly through the narrow hallway until she reached the open cockpit door. Inside, Captain Reynolds sat with his co-pilot, reviewing the route on the digital screen. Weather pattern shifting. Turbulence ahead. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the headset. Reynolds muttered something about timing. Then he froze, noticing a reflection in the glass. A small face. "Excuse me, sir," came a voice, soft but certain. Both pilots turned. There stood Maya, her shoes soaked, her toy plane still clutched in her hand. "You're flying into the wrong corridor," she said nervously. "The winds will shift east in 14 minutes, the co-pilot laughed gently. "Kid, this isn't a game. You can't just—" But Reynolds raised a hand, curiosity flickering across his face. "Wait, what did you say?" Maya pointed to the screen. "If you stay on the planned path, the crosswind will hit you hard from the east. You'll need to angle south, then climb again after the second front passes." Reynolds exchanged a look with his co-pilot. The live radar confirmed it. The readings were changing exactly as she said. For a long moment, silence filled the cockpit except for the rain. Then, slowly, the captain leaned back, studying the little girl who had just outpredicted his instruments. "Well," he said softly, "looks like we've got ourselves a junior navigator." And for the first time that night, Maya smiled. The same fearless smile her father once had when he looked up at the sky. The engines roared against the howling wind as Flight 709 tore through the dark clouds. It had only been 15 minutes since takeoff, but to everyone on board, it already felt like an eternity. The sky outside was an endless storm, black, bruised, and alive with lightning. Maya sat just behind the cockpit door, strapped into a jump seat. The soft hum of the engines had grown into a deep growl. Every few seconds, the aircraft lurched like a roller coaster in the dark. Gasps filled the cabin. Somewhere in the back, a baby cried. Captain Reynolds kept his eyes locked on the control panel. The needles on the instruments flickered wildly. "We've lost partial navigation," the co-pilot muttered, tapping the screens. "Gyro's unstable. Altimeter's jumping." "Maintain heading," Reynolds ordered, though his own voice trembled slightly. Outside, a bolt of lightning split the sky. So bright it lit the cabin for a heartbeat. Faces frozen in terror, hands gripping armrests. Prayers whispered into the roar of the engines, and then came the jolt. The plane dropped suddenly, hundreds of feet, throwing coffee cups and papers into the air. The oxygen masks rattled in their compartments. A chorus of screams filled the cabin. Reynolds grabbed the control column, wrestling the jet back under control. Sweat ran down his temple. "We're in a sheer pocket." "She's fighting the wind," the co-pilot's voice broke through the chaos. "If we don't clear this cell in 2 minutes, we'll have to turn back." But Reynolds didn't respond. Something inside him stirred, a memory of a little voice in the terminal, calm and certain. "The winds will shift east in 14 minutes. He turned sharply toward the jump seat. "Falcon!" he shouted above the storm. "Where's that wind shift you mentioned?" Maya had been gripping the seat so tightly her knuckles were white. The cabin shook, but her eyes were steady, scanning the radar display on the co-pilot's tablet. 2 degrees south, she called out. "Drop altitude by 800 feet, now." The co-pilot's jaw dropped. "Sir, that's below safe turbulence threshold." Reynolds cut him off. "Do it!" He pulled the throttle back, guiding the aircraft downward. The engines howled in protest, and the plane rattled like it might come apart. Lightning flashed so close the windows glowed white. For a second, everything was just noise and fear in motion. Then, silence. The clouds split open. The pressure eased. The aircraft burst out of the storm into calm, golden air. The setting sun painting the sky in streaks of fire and violet. Gasps and sobs filled the cabin. A few passengers began clapping, unsure whether from relief or disbelief. The co-pilot leaned back wide-eyed. "How did she—" Reynolds didn't answer. He just turned to Maya, who was staring out the window with quiet awe. "Good call, Falcon," he said softly. She looked up at him, a shy smile breaking through the tension. "I just listened, Captain. The wind always talks before it screams," Reynolds chuckled, shaking his head in wonder. The storm was behind them now, but deep down, he knew the sky wasn't done with them yet. The wheels of Flight 709 kissed the runway with a heavy thud, sending a shiver through the fuselage. A moment later, the cabin broke into applause, the shaky, emotional kind that comes after realizing how close everyone had come to disaster. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over New York, the first streaks of orange cutting through the thinning clouds like a promise. Inside the cockpit, Captain Reynolds exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The aircraft rolled smoothly. Toward the gate, the engines humming a low, victorious note. His hands, still trembling slightly, released the controls. He turned to look at Maya, still buckled into the jump seat, clutching her father's old toy plane. "Nice flying, Falcon," he said quietly, with a smile that held both gratitude and awe. Maya tilted her head, her cheeks still wet with tears. "I just remembered what my dad used to say. Don't fight the wind. Learn how it moves." Reynolds nodded. "Sounds like your dad was a good pilot." "He was the best," she whispered. When the seatbelt light went off, the cabin crew opened the door and a rush of morning air filled the plane. People began standing, grabbing their bags, still murmuring in disbelief. A few passengers glanced toward the cockpit, whispering about the little girl who helped the pilots. Then the loudspeaker crackled. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady but filled with emotion. "Before you leave today, there's something you should know." The cabin quieted instantly. Even the crying baby stilled. "Tonight we were caught in a storm that could have ended differently, but we had help from someone extraordinary." He turned toward Maya, who was half hiding behind the cockpit door. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reynolds continued, "this young lady's quick thinking and calm guidance helped us navigate through the turbulence. Her name is Maya Thompson, call sign Falcon." The cabin erupted in cheers and applause. Passengers clapped, some stood, others wiped tears. Phones came out, capturing the moment as Maya blushed furiously, trying to shrink into her seat. When the door opened to the jet bridge, the first person waiting was her mother, eyes swollen from crying, hands trembling. She ran forward, dropping to her knees as Maya rushed into her arms. The two held each other so tightly that the noise of the airport seemed to fade away. "I thought I'd lost you," her mother sobbed. Maya smiled through her tears. "You can't lose a Falcon, Mum. We always find our way home." Later, as news spread, headlines flashed across screens. 11-year-old Falcon saves Flight 709 from mid-air disaster. Reporters called her a child prodigy in aviation, a miracle kid, a hero of the skies. But when someone asked Maya how she did it, she only looked up at the morning sky streaked with gold and said softly, "I just did what my dad taught me. Always trust the sky." The world would remember her as Falcon, the girl who listened to the wind when no one else did. And somewhere far above, the clouds parted, as if the sky itself was smiling back.